Okay, all right, council, let's get ready to go. So I want to welcome everybody tonight. Appreciate you guys being here. Appreciate you tuning in to us. We got an agenda tonight. So we're going to start off with the prayer with Mr. Lesher, and then we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance of the flag. If everybody would stand, please.
Gracious God, we thank you for gathering us together here to serve the people of Talbot County in a spirit of justice, and ask that you be with us, that you guide us, and that we may work in wisdom for the betterment of the people of Talbot County. In your most holy name we pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Council, good job. Thank you, Mr. Lesher. I appreciate that good prayer. And let's go ahead and get started tonight on the agenda. We've got the agenda before us for tonight. Are there any additions, deletions, or correction to the agenda?
Council President, I would like to make 3 changes to the agenda, please.
Yes, sir. Okay.
I'll make a motion that we add a school safety issue to item number 5, right after disbursements.
Hold tight now. Right after 5.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right
Okay.
after, it'll be item number 5 after disbursements.
Oh, okay. Okay. Okay, no problem.
Okay, and then under the discussion of pending General Assembly legislation, since we have none, we do have a solar piece of pending general legislation to discuss that I'll be, or I'm sorry, not pending legislation, but I'd like to add a discussion on solar in the county in place of the pending General Assembly legislation.
Okay. All right, so that was, okay.
That's item 8.
I mean, now, what was that for? I'm sorry.
That's for discussion on solar.
Okay, no problem. Okay, number 3.
And number 3 is under the county manager's report, will be a discussion on a mid-year COLA. Now that I've made a motion, I will look for do I need a second on that? Or
I'll second it.
Okay, Madam Secretary, we got a motion and a second to make some changes on the agenda.
Okay.
Can you call the vote, please?
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio?
Aye.
Mr. Lesher?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Pat?
Aye.
All right. Moving ahead on minutes. We got the minutes before us on January 25th before us. Are there any deletions, additions, or corrections to the agenda?
To the minutes, you.
I'm sorry?
Additions, deletions, or corrections to the minutes.
Yeah, yes, Hearing none, the chair moves that the agenda be accepted as unanimous consent. And I apologize, I need to go back up to the agenda. I need hearing. I need to make sure that the agenda is accepted as unanimous consent. Sorry about
Mr. Callahan,
Yes.
we voted on that in lieu of that, so we're good
Okay.
to go on the agenda, and we can.
Okay, I just didn't know if I had to say that. Appreciate it, Mr. Lesher. Appreciate that. Okay, let's go under the disbursements of February 15th and the 22nd. Council has had a chance to review the disbursements of 15th and the 22nd. Is there any additions, deletions, or corrections? Okay, hearing none, the chair moves that the disbursements be accepted as unanimous consent. Okay, so then we have,
So now I'm up.
yep, this is school safety. Yes, sir.
So thank you for everyone for giving me a short piece of time here, and I apologize for having to bring this up last minute, but I felt that this was a need to address and inform the county council of what's going on and try to get the word out to the community the best that we can. This is an email that was sent out from the principal, Sherry Spurry, at Easton High School. Easton High School families, today we received another bomb threat, and just like the threat on Friday, it was from one of our own students. We will take every threat seriously and investigate thoroughly, but this needs to stop. We are wasting valuable educational time that has already been taken from our kids over the past 2 years. We're wasting valuable community resources and creating frustration within our staff, students, and families. Enough is enough. Please talk to your kids and let them know the devastation they cause when a threat is received. At Easton High School, we treat these kids like they're our own children. We value them and will protect them at all costs. After collaborating with Dr. Griffith and Sheriff Gamble, we have agreed to prosecute any student to the fullest extent and remove them from Easton High School. Our kids deserve better. We are under a mental health crisis. We all know that and are aware of that. Children are feeling it as well, and they're acting out. We have bullying situations as well. The kids have always been dealing with, but this is a new world and a new challenge that we're going through. So I just ask that parents take the time to speak with their children. This is the third local child since December that has filed a bomb threat in one of our local schools, and the disruption has to stop. Everyone is scared, and the resources are too valuable and too spread. So thank you for everyone's time tonight. I just wanted to make sure that everyone was aware that we know.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. DeVillio, for bringing that to our attention. Of course, I didn't receive that email. I don't have any children in the school system right now. The end of the email talked about prosecution of individuals who are found to have made these calls. Did it say anything about including the state's attorney's office, Mr. Patterson, in that discussion?
It did not, but I know that they're trying to pull together all resources that they can to address this.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeVillio. Does any other council member like to comment on this? It's very, very serious. And, you know, just like Mr. DeVillio said, the resources, the amount of money and time this takes, you know, so when they get prosecuted, whoever does this is going to be paying thousands of dollars for people to make sure that this school is safe. So not only if you're going to get prosecuted and possibly be in jail, you're going to get a big fine too. So be prepared for that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ville. I really appreciate that. Okay, so next on the agenda is the Talbot Watermen's Association. I think Mr. Harris is here with us. So welcome, Jeff.
Yeah, I finally got unmuted.
There you go. There you go.
Thank you. Thank you, Chuck. And thank all the council. I know it's been a rough couple of years, not only around the world and the country, but also here locally in the county. And we appreciate everything that you guys do. After going over to Annapolis for a while, I don't know how anyone can be a politician. And I applaud all of you for sticking it out and staying in there. But now I'll get to my Talbot County fisheries update, and will you be able to switch the page for me? Yes. We change the page.
There we go.
So anyway, this year, I get this information from the DNR. There's 513 license holders, individual license holders. There's actually more licenses, but some people have 2 licenses. And the important number to look at here is the 246 oyster surcharges. It could be a few more than that because these numbers were taken on the end of November. So it very likely is a few more, but that is part of the money that we use in our oyster shell seed replenishment program. And so that's about $75,000 of what we spend. So I can go to the next page. And this is kind of a review of what happened to us last year. In January through March, we're oystering. The oyster market was terrible. I think I worked 5 days the whole month of January. This was all due to COVID. All the restaurants were closed down. We were only getting $30 a bushel, and that was 40% below the pre-COVID price of $50. Also, the harvest did increase even though we had all those problems, and it says 400,000 here. It was really about 350,000 for that year. The gill netting for rockfish, the market price was once again well below because there were no restaurants open. Normally $3 to $5 a pound, and it was only $1 a pound. So what happens is most fishermen didn't fish at all. A lot of people don't realize that. They always say commercial fishing, you know, they catch all these fish. But we actually have about 1 million pounds of quota that's divided between gill net, hook and line, and pound nets. And the quota was not caught last year, basically because people did not want to go and give their fish away. So in April through September, we start clamming then. It really starts the end of March. And there were absolutely no white clams at all. And the razor clams that we use for the crab bait, they were still dying off. And it all came from that 2018 heavy rains that we had. That was such an event that it was still affecting the clams and the SABs as far as that goes. The SAB lines, I know that we had asked, that we had some bills in where they wanted to extend the SAB lines out and stuff. And those bills actually did not pass. But because the lines, they adjust them every 3 years, because in 2018 we had loads of grass. But after that rain event, they kept the lines where they were. Well, this past year, the grass has been decimated by this, the SABs. Again, this year, they're probably less than it has been since probably 2010. And it was all still from that one event, the 2018 event. So we're certainly hoping that we don't have things like that happen to us again. Also, the crab bait, the razor clams doubled in price to $75 a bushel. That was one reason crabs were so high. That was part of it. The actual crabbing, if you look over into the October, December, it got misplaced. And it talks about the winter dredge survey. Well, it was actually very low numbers of small crabs caught during that survey. And we felt that it was because not this past winter, but the winter before was a warm winter. And even some of the guys who died for oysters said they still seen crabs swimming, you know, in January when they do the dredge survey. And then there's also, we have 2 invasive species now that we know very little about, and that's the snakehead and the blue catfish. And we have no idea, you know, they could be decimating us too. So those are things that we need to look out for. As far as the crabbing went, the trot liners did fair. The harvest was below the year before, but we did get a good price. We got $220 a bushel off of the boat, probably all through May and June, and it did go down to 160 after that. But we actually had a fairly decent year, and it got as low as $100 in the fall, but it didn't stay that there for long, and it went back up. But the crab potters in our area, they had probably the worst season that they've had in maybe 20 years. Down the bay was hardly any crabs caught. I talked to some people from down there, and they set their crab pots and fished them for a couple of weeks, took them up and never put them back overboard again. But now up the bay, they had a really good season. So we have that sometimes. The crabs are, you know, they can swim, they can go wherever they want, just like the fish. And they probably moved up the bay. Now, when the charter boats too, they suffered from the COVID situation. A lot of their parties are out of state. There were problems with being able to cross state lines and coming home. You had to get tests and have no positive test before you went back to work. And it really affected them. Also through this process, we got funds from CARES Act. There was $4 million allotted to commercial fishermen. Those monies started coming out in February, and they were a great help. You had to show a 40% loss, which we were able to do, not only because of low markets, but because the prices were cheaper. So then we move over to October and December. Eeling, there's very few people that eel anymore, but the ASMFC regulates it. And what happened was they actually set their pots in the spring. There's a spring fishery and a fall fishery. When the spring fishery, they set their pots, they fished them one day, brought their catch in, and the buyer said, take your pots up. And basically what that was, there was no overseas market. Most of the eels are caught and kept live and sent overseas. And so it basically decimated that industry. It was really funny. The ASMFC triggered some alerts. They have alerts like if the catch gets down, and the guys had to call us and we had to straighten it out with them. The reason the catches were down is because they weren't fishing at all. So then when we move over to October and December, we start oystering again. In June, we set our limits and things. Now we do a stock assessment, and every June we set limits for the upcoming season. In January and March, we were only allowed to go 4 days a week. Well, this year they decided because the biomass of oysters was big enough, they gave us our Wednesdays back, which we greatly appreciated. So we were able to fish 5 days a week, or oyster 5 days a week. The price was still down. It was around $35 when it started, but now it has moved up gradually, and it's up to about $42. They also allowed harvesting above the Bay Bridge. That had been closed down for 2 years. And we are set to catch, the market was unbelievable this year. The best that I believe I've ever seen in probably the last 20 years. Even before COVID started, we had troubles with our markets it's always good, Thanksgiving and Christmas, everywhere. But after that, we would have trouble. This year, there has been no troubles whatever. We've worked 5 days a week. Matter of fact, it's gotten to a point where everybody's war rate out. And people are quitting now to get their boats ready. A lot of people fished down the bay or oystered down the bay. I stayed local most of the time, and I was able to catch my limit pretty much every day. Now it's getting a little slim. And like I said, I probably will take off within the next couple of weeks and get my boat ready. Also, the gill net for rockfish, the market came back again, and the price was back to the pre-COVID prices of $3 to $5. And rockfish are plentiful, what the fishermen see out there. One guy told me, he said, it's a school of rockfish in the channel that goes from Cove Point all the way up to the Bay Bridge. So plenty of rockfish, which is a good thing. And now I'll go to the next slide. All right, our Talbot County Oyster Shell Committee, we have some good news. First off, we've been doing this for the last 60 years. I've been on the committee probably for 35 of those years. We plant shell and spat on shell right now we're actually in the process of setting locations for the upcoming year. We plant from probably May through June. Our monies come from surcharges, which I told you earlier was like $75,000 that we get locally. Also, there's a bushel tax of $1.30. And then there's also the MDOT money, which is Maryland Department of Transportation, which is divided between the 11 counties, and we get about $78,000. Go to the next slide, please. So last year, we spent about $300,000. That's about what we spend every year. 1 year we did spend more in 2016, but that was because when O'Malley was in, he lost our money for a while, for a couple of years, and then he found it, and we ended up with a big pot of money, and so we spent it all 1 year. But Get to my page of notes here. If you look at Talbot County, we spent $53,000 on hatchery seed, which was right around 20 million spat on shell. We also planted $244,000 or almost $245,000, which bought us around 37 to 38,000 bushels of shells. Some concerns here is, of course, shells are limited. We're the ones that supply most of the shells because our oysters are harvested, chucked, and the shells are returned back into the water. And the price went from, it was $3 a year before to $4, and then this year it's $5. So we're seeing a trend. Our money stays the same, but the price of stuff that we're buying continually goes up. We, of course, say that this is a self-imposed shortage. I've been outspoken about man-of-war shoals. There's 100 million bushel shells up there. We only want to dig 5 million bushel, and we've never seen so many people against us doing that. We don't understand why. That bar, I think they did 171 samples over the last 5 years on it, and they've caught 2 live oysters. Those shells are so valuable of an asset for not only us, but also for restoration work and for aquaculture, that it's just a shame that they sit up there and basically do nothing as far as we're concerned. There is a bill in right now. The County Council of Baltimore is behind it, as well as their delegates, and it's to ban the possible dredging of man-of-war shoals. The truth of it is that the permits are already there. They're on the desk of the public, the Board of Public Works. And, all they have to do is bring it up. They will not bring it up. It's too politically connected. And we would hope that somehow we would be able to get some of those shells someday. We're still working on it. We have not given up. We understand that how important they are. And we just hope that everybody else understands. Can I go to the next slide, please? Next slide. Now for the really great news. And they did a review of all bottom, sanctuary bottom, public fishery bottom, and aquaculture. They are tasked to do that by legislation every 5 years, check these things out. In doing so, we found out that Broad Creek was the best tributary in the whole bay. It had 7 of the top 10 bars in it. We attribute this to what we do with our seed and shell program. Over the 10 years that Harris Creek has been a sanctuary, we planted about $1,100,000 worth of shells up there, and we mostly put shells in there because we do have decent spat sets there. During that time, we harvested over 400,000 bushel of oysters, which had a dockside value of $16.5 million. We produced over 400,000 bushel of shells, which are used in restoration work, as well as on public bottom, sanctuaries, and aquaculture. Those shells had a value of almost $1.4 million. And yet, after all of that and spending $32 million in Harris Creek, putting 2.49 billion oysters up there, spat on shell, there are still more oysters in Broad Creek than there are in Harris Creek. And so what we want to know is, why doesn't everyone in the state know this? When I heard the news, I couldn't wait to tell everybody. But for some reason, I haven't seen an article in the Bay Journal about this. And another question I've asked at an OAC meeting is, this state has been tasked to do 10, or not this state, Virginia and Maryland have been tasked to restore 10 tributaries by 2025. They already have Harris Creek. There's a little chop tank. There's Treadhaven. There's St. Mary's, and then there's the Minokin. Well, my question is, why can't this be a restored tributary? And I asked at the meeting why, and they told me it could not be. And I don't understand why, but apparently, yeah, I guess since we've done this for only $1,100,000, that they don't want anyone to know about it. But I wanted everyone in this county to know about it. And so I've been trying to spread the word. Next slide, please. Also, there's some more good news for Talbot County. The Oyster Advisory Commission, we were tasked 2 years ago, and it was through the legislature that we would meet for 2 years and come up with a plan, a new oyster management plan. Through the consensus process, which meant, first off, you had 60% industry folks, and you had 40% of other people, which were mostly environmentalists. So anyway, we met for 2 years. Like I said, it was the second Monday of every month. So we had met 24 times. We did it, the first 2 meetings were live or face-to-face, which is the consensus process really needs to work like that. You have to be in a room with people and be able to just become friends with them, really, is how it works. And you become more understanding. Well, anyway, it was all done virtually. And it was a fiasco at best. I think one waterman put it best. He said that he would rather sit on his porch, and he was from Dorchester County, in the summertime and get eat up by mosquitoes for 2 hours than to listen to an OAC meeting. So, but anyway, we got through all of this, all of it we got through. We stuck it out, and we actually came up with a pretty good plan, especially for Talbot County. Supposedly, over the next 25 years, the combination of replenishment, restoration, and aquaculture activities should be collectively planned and undertaken in Eastern Bay, which is in Talbot County, with an equal amount of funding for spat planning and sanctuaries, which is $1 million annually, adjusted for inflation, but also spat and shell on fishery bars. In addition to current replenishment, so they're not taking any of our $300,000 that we spend every year. So this will be an additional $500,000 for us here in Talbot County, as well as $500,000 for what's Queen Anne County. So this is really good for us. Now we're hoping that it comes through. Right now, there's no monies there, but we're hoping that this money will be here. And if you look at it, $2 million is actually more than the whole industry spends on the whole bay. So it's a big number, and we're thankful for it. And we're thankful for all the watermen who stuck it out through the terrible meetings. And I mean, they were awful meetings. Some of the people who didn't have computers listened on a flip phone. It was so much technical stuff and charts and graphs and things to go to. We were creating a model. And I just want to thank all of them for sticking through. And like I said, we actually got a plan that is going to, we feel that will help not only us, but everybody in the oyster industry. One other thing at the bottom, you see, it says the OAC supports keeping the oyster fishery open. We actually, this was after Peter Francho went out and said that he wanted to phase out the oyster industry. And so the next meeting, we said that we wanted in our recommendations that the OAC supports keeping the public oyster fishery open. This is the best they would come up with that we could get away with. They would not put public in the statement. It really is frustrating when you are in a situation where things are actually getting better now. I mean, I've been on the OAC for 5 years. When we were put there, they said, what we want is more oysters in the bay. Well, actually right now, I think the oyster biomass has been increasing for the last 3 years and is now higher than it's been in 37 years. So this is really a time to be rejoicing and not still coming up with your overfishing, your 1% of historic levels. You know, it's the same stuff over and over and over again. So I just want to thank everybody that did participate in that. And like I said, Talbot County again came out with a real good plan. Next slide, please. The elusive nutrient credit program. 2 years ago, aquaculture, floats, and cage was approved for nutrient credits. The this past year, bottom culture, which is what they do is they put oyster spat on shell overboard and they catch it with a dredge just like we do. They were approved for nutrient credits. We are still denied nutrient credits. The public fishery does exactly the same thing that aquaculture does for bottom culture, the same exact thing. For instance, this year on Swan Point, it was a program that was started 7 years ago by the Upper Bay. They started a power dredge test site. They caught all the oysters off the bar. Then they went ahead, and it was on Swan Point. They went ahead and they planted spat on shell. They closed. They were going to open it up in 5 years, but at the time they had closed down the Upper Bay. It was closed for 2 years, and so they opened it up this year. It was an extremely successful program. Over 20, I think it was somewhere between 20 and 25,000 bushels of oysters were caught. And we want nutrient credits for it. We have asked over and over again, what's the holdup? They tell us, they always give us the same answer. It'll be next year. So we are just hoping that eventually we will get nutrient credits. Like I told you, the price for shell is continuously going up. We have a limited amount of funds. This would be another place where we could get monies. All of the monies that we would get from this will go right straight back into putting more oysters on the bottom. Next slide. We do a scholarship program every year. We have for the last 6 years. We haven't had any fundraisers for the last 2 years, but we wanted to keep our program up, our scholarship program up. We were lucky enough to have some money saved up. But it was first the lumberyard heard about this, and they put a jar out for us just for our scholarship fund. Then Chesapeake Landing and Whitman Wharf followed through. And we were able to raise an additional $1,500 just this past year. And so we were able to give away 5 scholarships instead of the usual 4. And we give 2 to, usually give 2 at St. Michael's and 2 at Easton. We were able to do a 5th one in St. Michael's, or an extra one in St. Michael's. One of the scholarships goes to a child of a Waterman family, and the others can go to anyone. This year, we are doing something different. We're going to give 1 scholarship to a technical school. We're also going to give 1 for community service hours. We think it's especially important in a community like this to let people know that, you know, we appreciate everything that they do for us and that we definitely need volunteers. And also, like I said, we hadn't had any fundraisers in the last 2 years. We actually were going to do the Oyster Fest this year, and the night before it got canceled because of high tides down Chesapeake Bay Maritime Museum. I want to thank, it was Whitman Wharf and Carpenter Street. Johnny Mounts actually let us sit up there, and we did make a partial. We actually did really well. It was well attended. A lot of the people, because it was so late of a notice, had already come to St. Michael's looking for oysters, and so we were glad to be there to be able to provide it for them. Next slide. I'm almost done. These are some of the people that we donate through. Like I said, we are community-based. We like to give back to the community. I know this month the VFW is having a oyster roast, and we're donating all the oysters to it. Also, like some of these people at the hospital with COVID, we donated monies for masks and things like that. And we try to help everybody. We also have a sick fund that we try to help watermen who are out of work. We've had an unusual amount of Vibrio cases in the area. That's the infection you get from the water. And once you get it, some people are never allowed to get back on the water again. But a lot of times when you get it, you're at least 2 or 3 weeks out of work. And so we try to help those people, and we've been very fortunate to be able to do that. Next slide. And we just want to thank everybody who supports the public fishery, all the people who buy seafood, everyone that comes and helps out. And these are just some of the pictures of some of the things that we do. And I'm going to once again thank you guys. We were going to discuss some bills tonight. There's not many bills out there. Captain Newberry's going to send you those. Most of them, there's none of them that are extremely critical against us. So we feel like we can handle it for ourselves, but we do want to let you know what's going on. And if there's any questions, I would be more than glad to answer any of them.
Okay, Jeff, really appreciate the great presentation, man. We can't thank you guys enough. So, Council, Mr. Lesher.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff, and thank you for a really good presentation. Great to have this annual update from you. And I know you've had a rough couple of years out there. 2020 was a great recruitment year for oysters, and Broad Creek saw a lot of the benefit from that. I don't think that we've seen from the state the results of the 2021 fall survey yet, but you guys probably know this before the reports are released. How are things looking for 2021? Are you seeing a lot of spat out there?
Yeah, and actually, Broad Creek the previous year had the highest counts in the bay, and it tended to be really good counts the previous year from the Choptank River all the way south to the Virginia line on the eastern shore. Now this year we did get a presentation at the last OAC meeting of not only last year's but this past year too, 2021, and once again we've seen another great spat set again. It's actually even starting to become a problem, to be honest with you, because what happens is spat get on the oyster and you have to beat and bang on them to get them off, which is a good problem to have, don't get me wrong. We understand, but in this year, the spat catch, not only it moved up the bay a little bit into Miles River and Eastern Bay, they've seen the highest spat counts up there. They were only 30 and 40 a bushel, but they've been seeing absolutely hardly any, maybe 5 to 10. And it's the best counts that they've seen in 30 years. We've always said that, you know, this started in Virginia. They started seeing really good recruitment as much as 10 or 12 years ago, and it's slowly working its way up the bay. Like I said, this year, it was not only on this side of the bay, but it also jumped across the bay and moved its way all the way up to the Patuxent River. So we're seeing an actual change, and we feel it's a turning point in oysters. We hope that other people see this too and will acknowledge it. Like I say, we are seeing unbelievable spat sets. And we truly believe that what happened in Broad Creek and here up this way 2 years ago was because we brought some of that Virginia seed up here and planted it about 5 years ago. And we honestly believe that it has, it produces better, and it also is disease resistant. Out of 1,500 oysters that were checked for disease this past year, only 2 oysters had MSX in them, which is just unbelievable. Now there is some dermo, but the prevalence is very low. And the only concern we do have about dermo is it probably will come back up. You have to have real dry years. If we have 3 years of real dry weather, you can see emergence of it. And our concern is that there's very little dermo in public bottom, in public fishery bottoms, but in sanctuaries, it's still some there. And we're worried that it's actually harboring the disease. And the reason is because there's more mature oysters there. They hold the disease longer. And that's our concern, that, you know, if we ever get those conditions again, that there is a chance that since the disease is double what it is in public fishery, that it could, you know, start some problem. Does that answer your question?
Thank you very much.
Ms. Price.
Hi there, Jeff. It's really good to see you. And I mean, I've always been a big supporter. I've never understood why they didn't accept, you know, data like what you're getting from Broad Creek and things like that. It doesn't make any sense. And it's really good to hear that, you know, the amount of oysters is higher than it was 37 years ago. And no, we don't need to shut down the oyster fishery. So it's great to get this information. I do wish that the state leaders would take more recognition of that, but, you know, just keep on plugging away, keep beating your head against the wall, and hopefully it's going to start to sink in, you know, where it needs to. But it's great, and I'm sorry that, you know, you had such a bad year. You know, everybody experienced that in their own in their own ways with their own businesses, but, we're coming roaring back. So again, thank you for a wonderful report.
Well, thank you. And like I said, since Peter Francho came out and said that, we've heard from a lot of Democratic candidates, even though it is an election year. All of them assure us now that, they want the public fishery to continue. And we're hoping that maybe Peter Francho's letter over here at the Star Democrat may have hurt him in some ways, or at least that's our hope. Maybe that'll be his downfall, but we'll see. And thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. DeVillio.
Mr. Harrison, you have my full support. I greatly appreciate the update. It's always valuable and full of great information. I love the oysters and ate my belly full this weekend. So thank you for all you guys do.
Yep, and thank you for eating oysters. That helps. Everything helps. And by the way, too, we are trying to do our Watermen's Appreciation Day this year, and everyone is welcome. The only thing we say is enjoy the crabs and the good time and no politics whatsoever.
There you go. Well, I know Mr. Pat can put them away, get more oysters away. So what do you think, Mr. Pat?
I've never seen an oyster I didn't like.
There you go, my
Definitely
man.
always great report. And I want to ask one question regarding your Broad Creek numbers. Have you shared those numbers with any other organization like the River Keepers or the Chesapeake Bay Foundation? Has that report been shared broadly with other agencies?
Yeah, we discuss this at OAC meetings, and both of those groups, along with the CCA, they're all there. So they know the information. I think they hope, it's really terrible when you think it that way, that they hope that maybe it's just a short-lived thing. We don't feel that way. We feel that this is something that has really changed. In Virginia, they've seen it 8 years ago. They started increasing. They're up to catching 1 million bushel a year. This year, we're pushing 500,000 bushel. I think we'll get there, but it's definitely a change. And yes, they know all about this. Whether they want to believe it or not, I don't know. We were tasked to use the best science. Well, they know the best science. They see it. They know exactly what's going on now. What comes out of that, I don't know. I'll be honest with you. If we get a Democrat in office in 2 years, there's a good chance that, we might get phased out. And I think it would be a terrible thing. A lot of the reason that people come to Maryland is for seafood, and we're the ones that provide it. I don't know where they think it's going to come from if we're all gone. If they phase out the oyster industry, what am I going to do in the winter? Am I just going to go crabbing? I'm not going to do that. I'm going to retire is what I'm going to do.
Well, that's very disturbing to hear that you have these other agencies at the table having firsthand knowledge of your work and the results of that work, but yet not willing to report on that through their own network. That's very disturbing.
It's like I said, when it first came out, I couldn't believe it wasn't in the Bay Journal. I mean,
yeah,
and it wasn't. Why not? Why not put it out?
We all get that journal.
Yeah, exactly. I read every article in it, and I don't know what it is. I'll be honest with you, I have no idea.
Well, do you need anything from us in regard to that? Can we write someone on your behalf? I know there's other candidates who are out there who are running. I talked with Ms. Schultz 2 days ago. He's running on the Republican side. Is there anything that we can do for you?
Yeah, we know Kelly well, and yes, if it comes a time, we will definitely come to you and ask for something, believe me.
Okay.
And yeah, we will do that.
Okay.
Mr. Harrison, one thing I forgot to mention, and I want to bring up, because I'm seeing a lot more talk about aquaculture being the future. I have always been an entrepreneur at heart and in my soul, and I really love the idea of kids graduating high school, working on a boat, learning how to do it, Chesapeake College has the marine engine program to teach people how to work on an engine. You can build your own boat and get out there. You own your own business as a waterman. It's one of the few opportunities where a kid can graduate high school and quickly have their own business. And people talk about promoting aquaculture and how that's a great opportunity. It is for a millionaire who has the money to dump into it, but that's not who's graduating from St. Michael's and Easton High School. So what you're putting out there for future generations to be able to do and maintain that lifestyle of that entrepreneurial spirit, I can't thank you enough. And that's why I'll always make sure that there's a place in Talbot County for you guys.
We appreciate that. And yes, and look, we're never against aquaculture. I tell all of the young watermen, please get into it. I mean, there's monies there available. They want it to, and you know, we're not against it at all. It just has its place. And right now today a lease was dropped. It had been 3.5 years of going back and forth. We had told the guy from the beginning, you know, it's not a good bottom. They clam there. Of course, that's not one of the things. He could have went through with it and got it, and he did finally take it away. But right now, there's a lot of younger watermen because we have oysters. And it's so good to see, because we were afraid that even if no one did phase us out, we were going to phase out anyway. And it's really good to see. And I think there is a program they're talking about doing some internship on boats. So maybe that's a possibility for this county.
Great. Well, I hope in a lifetime I don't see you phased out. That's for sure. I can tell you. You know, I really appreciate that. You know, I really appreciate all you guys do, because you guys work hard. And just like Mr. Pack said, when the time comes and you need a letter or you need us to, you know, reach out to somebody that can help and make a difference, we would love to do that for you, because you guys mean a lot to us. That's for sure.
Well, we appreciate it. I'll tell you, we really do.
Yep. Sounds great. Well, Jeff, really appreciate your presentation you did tonight. You did a great job for us, and you guys are welcome here anytime. You bring us up to speed. Just reach out to us if there's any up-to-date information in the next month or so that you need to come on with us. But we're here for you too. Okay.
All right, we'll do that. And thank you guys. And like I say, we appreciate everything you guys do.
Thanks a lot. See you soon. Okay, council. All right, let's move on. That was great news and all that. That's for sure. So, okay. Now next on the agenda is council discussion on proposed tax amendments. Miguel, are you with us?
I am.
Okay, that's good. That's good. So, you want to go ahead and talk a little bit about the amendments, the First Amendment?
Sure. In Chapter 190 of the Talbot County Code, any interested person in the county may propose an amendment to the text of Chapter 190, which is our chapter related to zoning, subdivision, and land development regulations. When a text amendment is proposed, that proposed amendment that is submitted by that individual goes to the county council, who reviews that proposed text amendment. And if any member of the council determines that the subject matter of the text has comprehensive impacts to the county, the general welfare of the county, they can direct staff to draft or share in the drafting of the proposed amendment and submit a staff report to the Planning Commission for a recommendation to the council before the council introduces legislation. Or any member of the council, any one member of the council could determine that the proposed text amendment is focused on some specific land use or zoning or other topic, and then the council will authorize staff to process that application again to go in front of the Planning Commission for recommendation to the county council. So the next two items on the council agenda are two proposed text amendments submitted by two interested parties in the county. The first one, and I believe Brendan Mullaney is the agent for the property owner. The first one is an application for amendment to the text of our bed and breakfast requirements that are in Chapter 190. And at this point, Mr. President, if I could turn it over to Brendan and he can describe that text amendment to the council.
That would be great. Welcome, Mr. Munali.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Brendan Mullaney with McAllister, Detar, Showalter, and Walker.
Okay, that sounds great.
I'm the agent for Rolls Range Partners LLC, which owns a historic bed and breakfast north of St. Michael's.
And any chance you could turn your speaker up a little bit?
Sure that I can do that. I can probably move closer to the computer. Is that any better?
That's a lot better. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Sorry about that. How much of it did you get? None of it or some of it?
No, we got it. We got it. Just better. Yeah, just lean up a little bit.
Terrific. So we're before you. I think the process has changed some. We're before you now seeking a recommendation or authorization to move forward with staff to the Planning Commission and present this text amendment to them for a recommendation to come back to you all. The first text amendment that we brought to you this evening is related to historic structures in the CP and RC zoning districts. And it deals with some modern realities that bed and breakfasts are coping with today. In the last 20 years, Talbot County has lost somewhere in the midst of 50% of all bed and breakfasts. And that's in large part because of different rental options that have come around as a result of the internet. We've all dealt with the short-term rental environment, VRBO and Airbnb. As a result of that, we're bringing this text amendment to update the bed and breakfast code and also to allow additional bedrooms for certain bed and breakfasts located in the CP and RC zoning districts. This amendment is aligned with many of the other ordinances that counties have applicable to critical area properties. And for instance, Anne Arundel County allows a maximum of 12 bedrooms. Caroline County allows a maximum of 12 bedrooms to be used. Cecil County has no limitation, and Somerset County has no limitation in about half of their zoning districts. This amendment, as I'm sure you recognized, is applicable to dwellings that existed prior to adoption of the critical area law, and allows the use of accessory structures on the same property that existed prior to 2005 to be used to offer additional bedrooms. There are some other nuances in the amendment. For instance, the current bed and breakfast ordinance states that guest rooms cannot have a primary outside entrance. There are instances in the county where the fire marshal requires an outside entrance. So, that's just to deal with a practical reality of what's going on from a safety perspective. Happy to answer any questions that you have, but I think, the intention of tonight is to hear you all, see if there are any major concerns, and hopefully move forward to the Planning Commission to continue the dialogue. I think we would expect to give a more in-depth and detailed presentation when we're before you, hopefully in the future, with this same amendment.
Thank you. So I'm going to open it up to council for discussion. Does anybody have anything on this First Amendment that we want to discuss?
Yes, Mr. Callahan, I do.
Yes, sir.
I'm a bit concerned about adding additional rooms into the bed and breakfast ordinance. Previous councils have been down this road before, and I think we wanted to make a clear distinction between the bed and breakfast industry and the hotel motel industry. I think that if you're seeing a decrease in the use of B&B, there could be a host of reasons why. The increase of VRBO industry has increased dramatically over the years. So people are just renting their homes out directly and not going through a bed and breakfast for their vacation stays. Accessory structures has always been one that council wanted to stay away from previously, of using secondary structures on the property for rental purposes. We do not allow it in our STR code, and that's for good reason. I think we wanted to protect the neighbors and the neighborhood, not allowing those secondary structures to be used as rental properties. So there are a number of concerns that I have with this change in the text amendment, and I'll be looking at it a bit closer as we go through it as well.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Pack. Any other council member like to comment on this?
I will, and certainly I think the intent here is to ensure continued economic use of historic structures, and this does pertain just to those that are in that historic overlay zone. If I have a concern here, it has to do with the provision that would allow the innkeeper to live not in the bed and breakfast, but in an adjacent property. Now, granted, that's still fairly narrowly drawn. It's not an absentee owner. And so there's some mitigation here.
Right.
I think it's a little premature to comment. I have some serious concerns on both of these. We go through a lot of trouble to do our comprehensive plan and get the zoning codes correct, and then people want to change the rules that we've put a lot of work into. Certainly we can see about hearing out the process.
Sure. Okay. All right. Appreciate that. Mr. DeVillio?
I am going to hold my comments until I've had an opportunity to visit both properties and hear the response back.
Thank you, Mr. Okay, so do we want to hear a little bit about the next one? Is Zach with us tonight? Yeah, Zach Smith. I'm not sure he's with us tonight, I guess. So, all right. So I guess what we'll do, Madam Secretary, what do we have to do next? Do we just leave
I'm sorry,
these? Okay, go ahead.
Mr. Callahan, I believe Mr. Smith is on. We're trying to unmute him.
Oh, we are. Okay. Okay. Good. Good. So. Can you hear us yet, Zach?
Sorry, technical difficulties. Parker, can you unmute him?
Just while we wait for that, so for the point of order, this is my first text amendment. Are we going to make a motion and vote to move this over, or does it automatically go to them for review and back to us?
I was getting ready to ask Madam Secretary, what's the next step with this?
Mr. Callahan, I defer to Mr. Salinas or Mr. Thomas on this.
Okay. All right.
President,
Yes, sir. Go ahead, Miguel.
President Callahan, I can start, and then if Mr. Thomas wants to add to that.
Yeah, sure.
All it takes is it doesn't automatically go to the planning commission and for staff to prepare an analysis and report. The council as a whole could decide that the proposed amendment is inconsistent with Chapter 190 and the policies of the comprehensive plan, and it would not be processed further. But it takes just one member of the council who agrees that the subject matter is focused on a specific land use or zoning or other topic, or it has comprehensive impacts to the general welfare of the county, and who want to direct it further, sort of a sponsorship so they want to direct it further to go to the planning commission with the recommendation to come back to the council before the council considers introduction. I would defer to Mr. Thomas of whether or not that requires a motion or just a straw poll, or I'm not sure about that.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Mr.
Yeah,
Thomas.
So I would just add, I think it's just any member of the council can make that determination. It says any member of the council. Doesn't work. I don't think it requires a motion and a second and a majority vote. And I would also add that a member of the council in determining that the subject matter of the amendment has comprehensive impacts to the general welfare of the county, or that it is focused on a specific land use, zoning, or other topic, it's not a yay or nay. It's not a favorable or unfavorable finding. It's just that a determination that moves this to the planning commission, and then it still has to come back to be introduced and have a public hearing. So there's still many steps in the process to go.
So if that's the case, is Mr. Smith with us yet?
Yes, Mr. Callahan, I'm here.
Yeah, how you doing, Zach?
I'm good. Thank you. Sorry, I had a little technical difficulty.
No problem, buddy. That's fine. So you want to go ahead and we've gone over the first text amendment. You want to go ahead and tell us about Cedar or the next one?
Sure. So my client has the property at the end of Cedar Cove, and historically it's been used as a hospitality type business, a retreat center. My client acquired it a little over a year ago. It's not exactly clear how it was operating, under what land use or approval, but clearly it's been there for a long time. You look at it, it's a large hotel sort of building, has commercial kitchen. At one point it had a county liquor license. I mean, there's all sorts of indicia that it was operating out in the open. Everyone knew about it. And I think I've talked to groups such as Easton Utilities that had corporate retreats there. So it wasn't really not known, but it's just not clear how it was authorized. And so what this amendment tries to do is just call it what it is, and to create a use group where you could have a rural retreat center that is a very limited development. Nothing new would be added. It's just the existing improvements, and that could be used to host these sorts of corporate retreats in a very private setting on a large parcel in existing structures that existed prior to the enactment of the critical area law. So again, we're not creating anything new. We're just using the existing facilities as they were designed to be used.
See. Okay. Council, I'm going to open it up to council. Mr. Pat?
Yes, excuse me. I'm sorry. Dealing with a bad head cold here.
Yeah, I know you are.
Yeah, this text amendment, I do see the logic behind creating such a distinction of properties that have been previously used in this way. In reading over the text, I think it sets in a number of minimum requirements, if you would, that you wouldn't see a mad run on these types of use in the RC zone. So I think that with the precedent being set that the property was used for this purpose, and again, I couldn't find how that came to be, but it was clearly used for this type of recreational stay. I think at one time there was a religious group that was using it for a retreat center. The way the property is set up, it's certainly away from other properties. So I think that the language and the prior use of the property does fit with the language.
Villia.
Yeah, and I'm just taking the time to look through the emails that we received from the neighbors who say that the rezoning to change the use of it, yet some of them reference they've been there since the 60s. It seems as though they were unfamiliar with the current use of what was going on there. So, and none of them addressed that the roads have been destroyed over the years from multiple cars coming down. Nobody has said any of that. It's all the fear of what's going to come with it being changed. So yeah, I think it's up to us to do our due diligence to go back and figure out how it was able to operate so well before that these folks didn't even know.
Correct. Yep. Ms. Price, you want to say a few things, or you just want to wait?
Also reading the emails, and that it was the exemption apparently for this property was it was a nonprofit religious retreat, and it's under new ownership, and that may not be the case. It was never intended for commercial development. So I have some serious concerns with this one as well. you buy something under the rules that exist, and just because somebody was doing something that maybe was breaking the rules doesn't mean you make it okay to continue. So we have to find out what the deal is. But I'm understanding, like Mr. Pack said, that was a religious retreat, which was a different exception.
Okay. All right. Fletcher?
Well, I'm going to need to understand a little bit more about how this is a continuation. It sounds like quite a different function that is being facilitated here, but I don't think I understand that completely yet, and I'm not familiar with the site.
Okay. All right. Well, that sounds good. I've actually familiar with the site, so I know the site. I've been there. So hopefully, Mr. Smith, you can, explain a little bit more and get council a little bit more comfortable with what we're up against here. Okay.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
So, I guess what we'll do, at this time, do we have anybody that wants to go ahead and I guess sponsor the first text amendment on the first one? Is that the way we want to handle this, Mr. Lesher? Is that the way we want to go ahead and do a straw poll or raise our hands?
That's the appropriate method.
Yep. So okay, for the first text amendment. Okay, and for the second one. Okay, sounds good. Okay, so we'll move them on. Sounds like they go to the planning commission, so they'll do their due diligence and help us figure out if this is the route we need to go.
Thank you all for your time tonight.
Yes, sir. Thank you for coming, and thank you, Zach. Okay, let's move on to right now eligible for vote. So, Madam Secretary, could you read the first resolution into the record, Resolution 308, please?
Resolution number 308, a resolution to rescind adoption of resolution number 281, a resolution to amend the Talbot County Comprehensive Water and Sewer Plan, the plan to reclassify and remap portions of certain real property located in the town of Trapppe, Maryland, associated with the Lakeside Planned Unit Development, the Lakeside Project, formerly known as TRAPPE East, further described as Tax Map 54, Parcel 304, Tax Map 55, Parcels 14, 15, 17, 19, 44, 65, 83, and 85, and Tax Map 59, Parcel 4, the total area consisting of 865 acres, more or less, the property, from S2 and W2, areas where improvements or extensions to existing or construction of new community, multi-use or shared sanitary facilities are programmed for progress within 3 to 5 years to S1 and W1, areas served or to be served by community, multi-use or shared sanitary facilities which are existing, under construction, or have immediate priority status, to amend the plan to add certain water and sewer capital projects related to the Lakeside project and existing systems for the fiscal years 2020 through 2030, and to amend the plan to update the narrative description in the plan relative to the Lakeside project and existing systems as amended without prejudice.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. I appreciate that. So I think what we'll do on this, Mr. Lesher, I'm probably going to hand it over to you. This was sort of your resolution here at first, and we've heard a lot here in the last 3 months, all of us. And just what's your thoughts if you're getting a little bit more comfortable on what you've listened to.
Thank you, Mr. Callahan. And I think we're getting close to the conclusion on this one. We had a joint workshop with the Planning Commission just a week ago. In going over that at the workshop, I think we agreed that we were going to hear a formal written opinion from the Planning Commission. They'll be able to deliver that on the first, in their deliberations on the first Wednesday in March. And so this can be back before us in our first regular legislative session in March, which would be the next time that we meet. I just ask that we follow the plan that we set out and that in that workshop and defer action on this until our next meeting.
Ms. Price.
That's fine. They didn't end up discussing it at their February meeting because we had the work session planned, so it was removed from their agenda. So it's not their fault that they didn't take this up in February. So since it was removed from their agenda because of the work session that we had, I think that's appropriate.
Mr. DeVillio.
No comment at this time.
Mr. Pack. Yep. You want to comment?
I'll move either way, Mr. DeVillio. I mean, I'm ready to vote, but if the majority wants to post it back to March 14th, I can vote then.
I think we stick with the game plan. Let the Planning Commission take a look at it one more time, and then we wait to the next meeting to go ahead and vote on it. That's what I'd like to do. Okay, so Madam Secretary, could you read the next one?
Resolution number 313, a resolution to amend the Talbot County Comprehensive Water and Sewer Plan regarding the connection of Phase 1, Section 1 of the Lakeside project to the existing TRAPPE wastewater system.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Once again, Mr. Lesher, would you? I think Ms. Price and you had this. So, Ms. Price, you want to go ahead first?
Please.
Sure.
Thank you. So obviously on this one, we got an initial recommendation from the Planning Commission as written that it was not consistent with the comprehensive plan. And then at our meeting last month, an amendment was read into the record and introduced, and there was some confusion whether or not we needed to take a vote on that at that time. And I believe that Mr. Thomas was not quite clear at that meeting. And I think Mr. Lesher's had a conversation with him that just like when it only takes one council member to introduce a resolution before it goes to the Planning Commission, that would be the case with an amendment that has been introduced, that it goes to the Planning Commission. So I believe that much like 308 at our last meeting, we did discuss that we would like the Planning Commission to comment on that amendment. They've made comments, letters back in November talking about, connection to ENR, which is what this amendment is. But maybe when they wrote their letter back in November, they didn't really have anything specific to comment on. So I think we had some discussion at the last council meeting, and there were, I know for one, I would like to hear what they would have to say about that amendment, whether that amendment would be consistent with the comprehensive plan or not. So I would like to treat this one the same way, and then just go ahead and let them, again, take that up at their March meeting and bring them both back, because they're very similar circumstances.
So, Mr. Lesher, what's your thoughts on this one here?
Well, in all honesty, that would what Mrs. Price outlined would be my preferred course of action.
You still want to kind of go through. I know we talked a little bit about a lot of things about 313. Ms. Price, do you think it'd be best to go ahead and withdraw that at the moment and then we come up with a new one?
No, because for the exact same reason as 308, it only takes one council member to bring an amendment forward, which was read into the record for comment by the Planning Commission. So I'd rather not just stop the process. I'd like to hear what they have to say. And if it's not, then we'll know what to do going forward.
Mr. DeVillio?
Could you just remind me again, so on this amendment that you're sending over to them, now, this was written before TRAPPE agreed to upgrade their plant, is that correct?
Oh, goodness, no. That plant has been in the works to be upgraded for years. And
I'm
that
talking
plant
about-
won't. No. That plant, the wastewater treatment plant was due to be upgraded before Lakeside even was talked about. That's been in the works for a while, the grant. And that has nothing to do with what we're just speaking of this evening. I think we just need to stick with the procedure. That an amendment was introduced, and we've asked for the Planning Commission to comment on it, and we don't need to get into the meat and potatoes of the timing. We've done that ad nauseum. We've had 2 work sessions and discussed it at several council meetings, and right now I just want to hear from the Planning Commission about this amendment. You know, we can talk about it, but they are our recommending board.
Okay, well, thank you for giving me permission to talk about it. That's great. So I've received a lot of complaints that we were going to allow these hookups before it was approved to be an ENR plant. Yet TRAPPE did vote on that, and I don't believe any of us went down there, attended that meeting, or participated in that. And I don't believe that was, I know that was not my impression when this was drafted, that TRAPPE was prepared to make a vote to do that.
That plant has been scheduled to be upgraded for some time, and we know that it's still going to be another 2 to 3 years before that actually takes place. So what we have, the reason for this was to figure out what to do in the interim. I think it's wonderful that the plant's going to be upgraded. Absolutely, it needed to be upgraded even without Lakeside. But the problem is the interim, you know, the next 2 to 3 years of hooking up. But again, I don't want to get into, you know, the debate on that. We've done that on about 4 different meetings. The amendment was introduced. Procedurally, it only takes 1 council person to introduce either the resolution or the amendment, and it should properly go to the Planning Commission.
Okay, I just don't want to confuse them anymore, because it seems like we've gone back and forth and they've gone back and forth several times. And I'm just trying to figure out with new information why we would submit back the old document opposed to coming back and updating with something new.
It's not an old document. This is a new amendment that was introduced a few weeks ago. And again, it's
Mr.
not.
Callahan.
So.
Yes,
sir. Go ahead, Mr. Callahan.
Man, I think that council has some confusion. The matter that's before us for vote tonight is the amendment of 313 that the Planning Commission and the Public Works Advisory Board found inconsistent. That's what's before you tonight to consider. So if you go back and look at your packet, the amendment that's before us tonight is not what Mr. Lesher had attempted to introduce 2 weeks ago. Okay, let's make sure we stay on the right track here.
I'm not,
What you're talking about here is the amendment that was introduced prior that the Planning Commission and the Public Works Advisory Board both said were inconsistent. That's what you're talking about tonight.
No, we're not talking
To
about.
Mrs. Price, if I may, Mr. Price, I did not interrupt you.
I'm not
at a
going to let
time.
you.
Say,
Mr. Callahan. Mr. Callahan.
a
I'm not-
resolution
Mr. Callahan, speak.
is not an amendment.
The resolution has
308 was a
amendment
resolution. It
introduced.
only takes one person
Correct.
to introduce a resolution. An amendment has to have a second
That's
and has to have a vote.
okay. Mr. Thomas, I'd like to hear from you because I think you specifically told Mr. Lesher it only took an introduction of the amendment before we send it to the Planning Commission.
In the past, with 281 specifically, amendments were introduced and then sent to the Planning Commission for the recommendations before they were voted on
There you go.
by the council. The introduction of an amendment is not the same as a motion to approve the amendment. So even they would still have to be somebody would still have to make a motion to approve the amendment. It would need a second and then it would have to be voted on.
But those introductions to 308 did have a majority support to forward them over to the Planning Commission. there was a majority support to send them to the planning commission.
Did you
An
just hear what
introduction
Mr. Thomas said?
still has
Did
to
you
have
just-
action upon it of an amendment. It's
You
written
didn't
in
listen-
Robert's Rules of Order.
Okay. Mr. Thomas, could you please?
Formalized
No.
governmental body handles amendments that way.
Are you going to listen
So-
to your county attorney who just told you?
I have
what
listened to the county attorney. I've listened to the county attorney address this on several occasions.
Okay, Mr. Thomas, could you please?
And even,
what you
and
just said?
even so, that's not what we have here before us tonight.
Yes, it does.
What's before us tonight
Pat,
is the amendment that was entered in, and both the planning commission and the public works advisory board found to be inconsistent.
that's not correct. There was no amendment to 313 until the last council meeting. The planning commission,
Yes, there was.
Mr. Pack, there was no amendment that the planning commission has yet considered. They considered the resolution as written with the 18-month language. The amendment about connection to an ENR plant has not gone to the planning commission. Mr. Thomas just told you that it only takes the introduction of the amendment, not a vote, before it goes to the planning commission. So if you will now listen to your county attorney.
That's not true. That's not true.
Okay.
And even so, that's not what's in front of us right now. That the amended 313 is not, with that language, is not what's in front of us.
Because we haven't gotten a recommendation back from the planning commission, which is allowed and proper.
It hasn't gone to the planning commission because
That's what I'm trying
it
to
has
do.
not gone to the planning commission.
That's what we're trying
Because
to
it
do.
was not voted on by the council to move it to the planning commission.
Mr. Callahan, could you please have Mr. Thomas repeat what he said without
Okay,
Mr. Pack interrupting the county attorney?
that's all. I'm going to warn everybody, okay? Everybody talks one at a time. And I mean that. Mr. Thomas, can you slowly go through what we're looking at exactly right here at 313? We're looking at the original resolution right here.
Right, so this resolution was introduced, Resolution 313 was introduced, went to the Planning Commission as a comprehensive water and sewer plan amendment for their recommendation, their review and recommendation as to its consistency with the comp plan. They
This
found
one
it was
right
not,
here. This
this
one
one,
right here.
313. They determined it was not consistent with the comprehensive plan. And then Councilmember Lesher introduced an amendment to this resolution that changes the language and would provide essentially that phase one cannot connect to the existing facility until it's upgraded to ENR treatment. That has only been introduced. Planning Commission, to my knowledge, has not weighed in on that. So that's where we are. The motion, that amendment has not been moved. Nobody's made a motion to amend it. Resolution 313 is currently as introduced, but that's where we are. So we have an amendment that's been introduced, and that's it. In my view.
And help me out here with Mr. Thomas or Mr. Pack. The lots that were added into the in TRAPPE that we gave the ability to connect. Do you remember when we did that?
Like 2 years ago.
Okay.
That was with 281.
Okay. So and I'm just trying to figure out. So we have given the ability for additional hookups to that plant.
Yeah, it was like I think 12 lots or 12 homes. I think 12 to 15 homes. We allowed that to happen, and I don't know if Ray's on here or not, but Mr. Clark can clear that up.
And was that sent? Would we have sent that over to them as well to certify that it was within the plan for us to do that?
Talking about the
Them
planning
being the
commission.
planning commission,
Yeah.
that was in part of 281.
Okay, so there is precedent that we have already added additional hookups to that plan, and that it was within the comprehensive plan and okay to do that. And now we're sending over an amendment saying that it's not okay to hook up anything else to it.
Well, that's yet to be seen, Mr. DeVilliers. I think that there has to be a vote taken on that amendment and whether or not it goes forward.
And I apologize, I'm just trying to put it in
Yeah, but
simple
before
terms
we
that I
get
can
that,
understand.
how do we dispose of 313? That's on the agenda for vote tonight.
And as Mr. Thomas just stated, the amendment was introduced. It is procedurally should go to the Planning Commission, which it has
He did not
not
say that.
yet. That is what he just stated twice, and is exactly what we're doing with 308. Mr. Lesher, I see your finger up.
He did not say that.
Go ahead, Mr. Lesher.
Mr. Callahan, I think we've got two possible courses of action in front of us. One is that so we can't really vote on this because we have, as written, unamended, as written, the Planning Commission has found that this is inconsistent with the comprehensive plan, and therefore it cannot go up for a vote before the council. The option then is for the sponsors, and there are 3 of us sponsoring this resolution 313. If all 3 withdraw their sponsorship, the resolution dies. If, on the other hand, we take no action, or if not all 3 sponsors withdraw their sponsorship, it remains alive, and presumably, while it remains alive, the Planning Commission could consider the amendment. We can take this up next time, presumably after we've heard from the Planning Commission, or we could all withdraw our sponsorship of this resolution.
I think for purposes of simplifying this and simplifying it, I think we all know where we need to go, and we're struggling getting to the finish line here. I would prefer my vote to be withdrawn. That's what I would like to do. And in that way, we're going to be voting on 308 next meeting. Okay, this gives us an opportunity to get this thing right, Mr. Lesher. And I think this 313 has somewhat, if you will, dirtied the water. And let's go ahead and look at this again, because I think we all want to be there, but let's go ahead and withdraw and come back with a new one. It's that easy.
No, I'm going to follow the proper procedure that is due to any council person who introduces a resolution and has an amendment. And I have the right to do that, and that is what Mr. Lesher said his preferred course of action is. And everybody's just got their minds made up that they're not willing to do anything, that they're not allowed to let the procedure take place, because they know, every council member knows exactly that what the planning commissioner is probably going to decide, because they've already stated their preference to connect to ENR. So I think we kind of know what the outcome's going to be, and I feel like someone's trying to usurp the proper procedure to get their desired outcome. And so I am not going to withdraw my sponsorship of the resolution, and I'm not going to withdraw the sponsorship of the amendment. And for goodness sakes, they're going to be considering 308 at their next meeting. They should consider this amendment, and we can come back and we can figure it out.
Well, you gave us permission to talk about it, so I'm going to continue under that. And I appreciate that. So I have heard from a lot of people in the community that they don't know how to shut this project down, and they're not against it, but they're against the spray irrigation that could come out there. So from my research, I found that there's only 3 types of wastewater treatment facilities that are available. Mr. Thomas, is it possible to create a neighborhood or a development like this and ban sewer so that everybody has to have a colostomy bag? Or do they have to have a wastewater treatment facility?
I could not answer offhand whether the development has to have a wastewater treatment system. I would think that septic would not be the preferred option. But I imagine I would have to look at the code to confirm that. I don't know if
I think,
Ray or Miguel can confirm that offhand.
Okay, and so in MDE, the governing body of these facilities that approves them is going to issue a permit to make sure that it's able to handle the load that it's receiving. I mean, that's their job. So I'm completely confused at what anybody is trying to achieve with 313. Is it that you think that if you say, well, the TRAPPE plant's not going to come for 2 years, so if we require them to wait till that's been upgraded, so that you're putting a moratorium for 2 years on that development, or are you giving the Planning Commission the tools to say, this is the style facility that we would like to see there in the interim? Because I don't see that in there. Is the interim solution in there?
Mr. DeVillio, I addressed that last month. There is technology that can be brought in on a temporary basis. This is in no way, shape, or form a moratorium. Not at all.
That's in here? That's on, where is
No,
that?
it just says they have to connect to ENR technology. It doesn't matter what kind of ENR technology. You can bring in temporary modules tomorrow or next week or whatever.
Why wouldn't we ask them to evaluate the solution? Or is it their job to come up with that?
No, we know what the ultimate solution is. They have the spray irrigation is completely separate. That's their long-term solution for the entire development. The short-term solution was to connect to the TRAPPE wastewater treatment plant, which, based on information that we have learned, is not necessarily the best option. And as I'm going to state this one more time, there are 3 different types of treatment. They have the ENR, the BNR, and the BioLAC. Why wouldn't you require the best technology if it's available? If it wasn't available, that's fine. And it's not, it's not great. But my point is, there is no moratorium. The technology exists that can be brought in very rapidly for a short term while the treatment plant is getting upgraded and while they're building their spray irrigation field after MDE approves that. This is a short-term interim solution to require them to connect to ENR technology, which they could do immediately. They don't have to wait.
So I wasn't talking about ENR and BioLAC. I was talking about direct discharge, spray irrigation, or the ground drilling types of.
It has nothing to do with Resolution 313. That's a whole.
Right. So what I was addressing was on this amendment that I would think that amendment number 2 that we could send over to them is saying, here's the solution of using a temporary package facility that would be able to maintain it until TRAPPE is upgraded or until Lakeside is able to develop theirs. But that's not in this. This is just saying.
It's just broad. They can use whatever, they can use anything they want as long as it's ENR. So if they want to use what you're speaking of, I'm told there are temporary modular units that can be brought in to connect whatever homes are built while they're doing their other process. And, we're talking about the merits right now, which we can talk about at the next meeting after we get a recommendation from the Planning Commission. And the resolution has been introduced, the amendment has been introduced, and the next proper procedure, just like 308, is to send it to the Planning Commission. And then we can have the rest of this debate, whether or not you agree with the recommendation the Planning Commission will give us. But we're ahead of putting the cart before the horse here, because we don't even know what the Planning Commission thinks of the amendment. And that's all that should be being discussed tonight. And the procedure and the county attorney has told you that that is what is supposed to happen.
Well, yeah, obviously it's procedure, but it's also procedure and acceptable for somebody to withdraw theirs, and it's fine for anybody to ask for that as well if they're completely against it. So I don't understand the hostility. We're trying to get all to the same point here.
Well, I'm not withdrawing my sponsorship, so I would hope that it's all going forward now with the Planning Commission for their March meeting.
President Callahan,
Yes, sir.
interject. I'm sorry, it's kind of
Yeah,
awkward.
no problem. Yeah,
But sorry to interrupt.
please do.
So there's 2 parts to this 308 in terms of Planning Commission's role. 308, my understanding to lay on the vote for 308 so the Planning Commission has an opportunity to opine on 308. And then there's 313, which is under discussion now. The Planning Commission has advertised their March meeting, which is next week, Wednesday. I don't know, and I defer to the county attorney on this for let's just say 308, the Planning Commission's opinion on 308. If it falls under discussion items, can we amend the agenda with the agenda already having been advertised in the Star Democrat? And if not, then we'll have to look at an agenda, or an April meeting for that. And then the same thing, whatever conclusion is on Resolution 313, if indeed it does go back to the Planning Commission with an amendment to the original resolution, that definitely would have to get advertised, which means it wouldn't go until April.
Well, I'm going to respectfully say it should have been on their agenda because the council gave direction in the January meeting for them to discuss it. So if somebody dropped the ball and not getting on their agenda, it was supposed to be on their agenda in February and it was removed. And if it hasn't been advertised, then somebody needs to fix it because it should have been, because council gave direction on both resolutions at our last meeting.
Mr. Thomas, you want to speak any more about this?
Well, I'll just say, as far as the Planning Commission, I mean, just it's important to keep in mind that 308 and 313 are two different things. I mean, 308 is a resolution rescinding Resolution 281, so it's not a comprehensive water and sewer plan amendment. 313 specifically is a comprehensive water and sewer plan amendment, so they don't quite follow the same process. If the Planning Commission, I don't know that the Planning Commission has to have a public hearing on 308, in which case I believe they probably could amend their agenda to add this, whenever an agenda can be amended to address items when they become known that weren't known at the time of publication. But if the comprehensive water and sewer plan amendments typically have a public hearing before the Planning Commission, then this amendment coming back would probably require another public hearing, in which case it would be too late to get that published for the March meeting.
Mr. Lesher?
Well, I've got a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Ms. Price.
When we have amendments, and if we've already had a public hearing, the county attorney always tells us whether they're substantive or not. So the Planning Commission has already had a public hearing on 313. And when you and I talked about this amendment, you told me it wasn't substantive. So wouldn't that follow the same procedure? They've already had their public hearing and now they're just reviewing an amendment. They've already had their public hearing. And so if you told me it wasn't substantive, then it shouldn't be substantive for the Planning Commission either. And they should be able to add it back into their agenda.
I don't believe it is a substantive amendment because I think it relates to a condition on the connection of phase 1 to the existing facility, similar as 313 does. I don't know offhand whether in the past they've treated, there's no real procedure for how these, these introductions to amendments go back, and then whether they have a public hearing on them or not. So I just have to look more closely at how that's been followed in the past to make sure we're following the same practice.
Sir, comment.
Well, I think that we don't have withdrawal of all the sponsors, and so we can move on to the next agenda item.
All right. So,
Mr. Callahan, a point of order. Since 313 is before you for vote, as the chair, you can always choose to table this. I don't think you can just leave it hanging out there and just move on to the next item. You must address it, as uncomfortable as it may be. So either you can call the vote on 313, or you can choose to table 313, but you just can't move on.
No, it's going to the planning commission. That's the next point. The amendment is going to the.
313 has already gone to the planning commission. They've already considered it, and they've already said it's not consistent with the comprehensive water and sewer plan.
You don't listen very well. The amendment is going to the.
There is no amendment to 313 before the planning commission. You keep on saying that over and over. I'm talking about the agenda that we voted on that's printed here tonight, Mrs. Price. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm talking about the agenda that's printed that we all agreed on no more than 3 hours ago when we started this. This is what I'm talking about. 313 as printed in your packet.
I'll tell you what, I'm going to end it all. I don't want to hear any more. I don't want to hear any more. We're going to table it. So that ends that.
Wait,
Okay,
Mr. Callahan, you can't just make it go away. There is an
I
amendment.
didn't. I said I tabled it. I
There
didn't
is
make
an
it go away.
amendment on the floor to go to the planning commission,
That's fine. Let it go.
and it needs to go to the planning commission at their
Let it
next
go.
meeting.
Let it go.
But tabling it makes it go completely away, and that is unacceptable.
No, it does. You can bring it up at any time. You can bring it up at any time.
You can make your amendment at any time, but the amendment that was introduced last week, if I remember 2 weeks ago, if I remember correctly, the second to that amendment was withdrawn.
You don't need a second. Mr. Thomas, can you please clarify, like you did to Mr. Lesher? You don't need a second to introduce an amendment.
A second is
You
not
need a second to amendment. You do.
Listen to him.
the motion to amend has to have a second, just like any other motion, and there has to be a vote. And you all could make a motion.
Thank you.
But the introduction, any member can introduce the amendment.
Correct. The introduction of the amendment is to go to the planning commission.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
Okay, then you can tell your county attorney that he's wrong. He just told you an introduction is different than a motion and a second to vote. An introduction, just like introduction of a resolution, goes to the planning commission.
Mrs. Price, you can introduce anything. You can introduce in writing, you can introduce verbally, but that introduction is not a gateway, it's not a free pass for that amendment to now move forward. It still has to be acted upon. Introduction just puts it on the table.
Mr. Thomas, please fix this. You've told him 3 times an introduction can go to the planning commission.
That
No,
is
he has
correct.
not said that. You've said that 3 times. He has not said that.
I think there's a couple of ways it could work. The introduction, you introduce a written amendment, like was done with 313, and then you can move that. You can send that to the planning commission for their recommendation as a comprehensive water and sewer plan amendment. You can make a motion to amend resolution 313 as set forth in this amendment, put it up, and then if it passes, then you send the resolution as amended to the planning commission. The way it's been done in the past is the introduction was sent to the planning commission. I don't think there's anything in the rules or Robert's rules that specifically addresses that one way or the other. To me, I think it actually makes more sense to vote on the amendment first, so you're not sending piecemeal introduced amendments, but you have a precedent for doing it that way in the past. So I think you can do it either way.
So what I'm hearing, bear with me, Mr. Pack, bear with me. What I'm hearing from Mr. Thomas is your recommendation is call for the vote. That's what your recommendation's, because this doesn't have the amendment on it. Is that what I'm hearing?
This agenda does not have the amendment on it, or somebody can make a motion to amend resolution 313. When we did this with the rules of procedure resolution 311, where somebody made a motion to amend a certain section of that resolution by changing one sentence to read a different way or insert or delete language. So, I mean, that's an option as well.
So if I have to make a motion to reintroduce this amendment that was already read into the record and introduced, I'll do that again. But we already did that, and everybody's ignoring the fact that the amendment was properly introduced, and you just said that if introduced and there's precedent for it, it can go to the planning commission. I don't care what makes more sense or what's clear. If the rules allow and there's precedent for an introduction of an amendment to go to the planning commission, then that's where it should go.
I'm
period.
just laying out the options.
Okay, it's an option, but that doesn't mean that that's the rule. And so if we have done introductions before and they have gone to the Planning Commission, then that's exactly what should happen. Because I don't have enough information, nor does the rest of the council have enough information if they're willing to listen, to get the Planning Commission's feedback on whether this amendment is consistent with the comprehensive plan. That's all I want to know. It's one.
I understand that. I understand that, Ms. Price, but what you're looking at right now, it's been in front of the Planning Commission.
No, it hasn't. The amendment has not been in front of the
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that now. I'm not saying this. What we're dealing with tonight has been in front of the Planning Commission.
So there's a problem with what's written on our agenda this evening because the amendment was introduced at the last session. So
let's go ahead. I'm going to call for the vote. I'm going to call for the vote for 313.
Mr. Kelly, and I don't think that we can do that since there is no affirmative recommendation from the Planning Commission. We can't vote on this without because unamended it's not eligible to be voted on. We could withdraw sponsorship as you have offered to do, Mrs. Price.
I think that's what we should do. We got to do either or, Mr. Lesher, because we got an attorney that gives us that option. We got an attorney that gives us that option. Go ahead, Mr. Pat.
Just as a point of clarification, Mr. Lesher, you can vote on 313 as it's drafted and as it appears. So to say that you can't do that is misleading. You most certainly can vote on 313 as it is drafted. It has gone before the Planning Commission and the Public Works Advisory Board. They both has made a ruling of inconsistency on this document. So to say that you can't vote on it is misleading. You can. And if you wish to table it and then reintroduce it later down the road, you're more than welcome to do that. But let's at least have some semblance of order.
Right.
313 as it appears tonight can be voted on.
There is an amendment that was introduced. Period. And you're all ignoring that, except for Mr. Lesher. He knows.
I don't believe I'm ignoring it.
Well,
I know I'm not. I know I'm not.
It's so simple. There's an amendment introduced, and there's council members who are not willing to let the Planning Commission weigh in on it. And that's the proper procedure. And this is
Mrs. Price, let's be very simple. Introduce the amendment. You pulled your second last week. Call the vote on the amendment. If the majority decides for the amendment to go forward, then send it forward. To keep on saying there was precedent is also misleading because every time there has been an amendment, there has been consensus of the council on that amendment.
Mr. Thomas, can you repeat yourself for a fifth time?
The amendments only require one for introduction. They don't require a consensus for introduction. They require a consensus for to pass.
Correct. An introduction is not a gateway to go forward. That's just introduction.
No. Say that again. Introduction can go to the Planning Commission, correct?
No, it can not. That is not a free go to the Planning Commission pass.
That's not true. Mr. Thomas, answer the question.
Yes, I believe it can.
There you go. For the sixth time tonight.
But it can, and Mr. Thomas, I want to make sure I understand. So if this new amendment can go to the Planning Commission, if it can, that's fine. But it's not this one we're looking at. It's a new one.
So it would be the amendment to 313. It's not 313. They would just be looking at the amendment to 313.
But what Mr. Callahan asked you, Mr. Thomas, was that's not what's on the agenda tonight. That's what he asked you.
The amendment is not on the agenda, correct?
Right.
So explain to me how it could have been introduced, and maybe somebody wrote the agenda incorrectly, but that amendment was properly introduced at our last meeting. And so maybe somebody wrote it wrong, but just because someone made a mistake in how they wrote the agenda does not.
A second.
It doesn't need a second. Mr. Thomas has told you that 6 times tonight. Didn't need a second for introduction.
Let's ask Mr. Thomas. Let's ask Mr. Thomas, and I know we're putting him on the spot. Mr. Thomas, what do you think the best avenue would go tonight on what you see in front of us? You've heard all of us. You know, we know we want to try to get to the finish line with this. So what do you recommend?
I recommend that somebody make a motion to adopt the amendment to Resolution 313 and put it to a vote.
Ask why we don't have, how can we vote on something that the Planning Commission hasn't reviewed?
They still have to review it. You can't vote
It's
on
still going to them.
adopting the
It's
amended
going to them.
resolution until the
Yes,
Planning
but-
Commission provides their
but
feedback.
This is a predetermined outcome because it's not going to pass and everybody knows that. So if it doesn't require 3 council members in the affirmative to go to the Planning Commission, and it can go to them simply by one person introducing it, that's the way it needs to be done, because otherwise we have a predetermined outcome that we're disallowing a properly introduced amendment for the Planning Commission to never review. That is wrong.
I believe we're giving you the opportunity to work with us to come up with a better solution. I sort of think that that's what we're all asking for at this time. Nobody is saying that this is a negative or that we're completely against this. You're asking for an amendment to a resolution to go over the comprehensive or to the Planning Commission, and we're addressing some concerns that we have. That's all that we're doing. And yes, my biggest concern with them is that we have confused MDE because things have been done so many different times. I have recently said over and over again that I love how Annapolis breaks for a session so people have time to sit back, reevaluate, and come back together again. And sometimes that's what you have to do. Sometimes it takes a week, sometimes it takes a day.
We're not following proper procedure. It was introduced. It may go to the Planning Commission, and y'all are trying to usurp that process.
I am not trying to stop that process in any way other than to ask you for a little bit more time that we could work together on
This
something.
has been going on for months, and it was properly introduced, and this is the right thing to do, to wait 2 more weeks for them to give us what they think, and then we can come back and we can finish this conversation. But we don't have all of the information that we need to take a proper vote on this amendment, and they will have time to review it. And that is the right thing to do, rather than to usurp the process and to spend another hour arguing over this and looking like fools. It is a process that is proper, and you're trying, and this council is trying to stop it.
I would say no. That is not true.
So it takes
This
one
council-
council member,
this-
one
But no,
one
but
council
Ms.
member to
Price,
keep this
Ms.
going.
Price, this council's not trying to stop anything. Okay?
You're not letting this go to the
We
Planning
wouldn't have
Commission?
we wouldn't have been 3 months in meetings trying to get it all straight. Okay? So don't even try to go down an avenue that we're not patient.
So
We're trying to
Mr.
get-
Thomas just told you that it only takes introduction by one council member to go to the
But
Planning Commission.
no, he didn't tell you that. He told you to vote on it, is what he told you.
No, he said that would be easier,
I
but
know.
sometimes that's not the way to do it. That's not what has to happen. If that was the rule, if it was absolutely Robert's rules that we had to take a vote on every amendment before we ever sent something to the Planning Commission, then that's what we would do. But that's not the case.
What he told we should do.
Well, no.
So here's the thought process is we want to get this thing right, and we want it to go to the Planning Commission.
And
Okay?
let's send it. So
Oh,
let's send it. And I'm done for the evening. I'm done for the evening. It was properly introduced. We need to send it to the Planning Commission. I'm done speaking on it. If you guys want to do something else and table it and ignore what proper procedure is, then that's what you all will have to decide on. But I know what the proper procedure is. The county attorney told us, and it only takes one council member to introduce a resolution or an amendment, and that has been done.
Mr. Callahan, out of whatever term we've always used for it, I'm not prepared to vote on this tonight, so I'd ask that we set it aside.
Thank you, Mr. DeVillio. Let's go ahead and set this thing aside, and We'll give it another couple weeks. That's,
So we're just gonna, you're tabling it, right?
yep.
Which is
Whatever term we need.
Okay, we just want to make sure we use the correct procedure. You're gonna table 313. That's fine.
Okay, let's move on. Let's move on to discussion of solar panels in the county.
We got the golf Parks and Rec stuff.
Oh, we do?
Yep, 1496.
That's why I got you. You know, that's why I got you. You know, thank you there, brother. Appreciate it. Okay, so and I think Preston's on here, so he's gonna be mad at me, isn't he? You know, please tell him I didn't try to bypass him. Good Lord. Okay, Madam Secretary, could you go ahead and read the bill, please?
Bill number 1496, a bill to repeal and reenact Chapter 102, Parks and Recreation, Talbot County Code, and to enact a new Chapter 76 entitled Golf Board.
Okay, that sounds good. I'm going to open that to the floor. Preston, are you with us?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'm glad Frank had me there.
Man, I tell you what, I'm going to pay for that one, aren't I? I'm going to pay. I'm, you know, but I got a smile out of you anyway. Go ahead, buddy. Let us know what's happening.
So this is something that's been it's been almost a calendar year, just trying to get these rules in place. This is something that really it's just getting our rules into the code book so they're enforceable. We've had some problems at a couple of our landings, Black Walnut Point and Claiborne, two of them, that, you know, with a little bit more teeth in our ordinance, we probably could have handled a little bit quicker. So this is not something that we're going to go overboard on. This is not something that we're, you know, trying to get these, you know, these laws in place, these ordinances in place so we're able to go out there and do things. It's mostly just so that when there are things that are done wrong, that we can address them in a, you know, a more expedient way.
Okay. All right. Let's any council want to comment on this? We're all pretty good on this. Mr. DeVillio, you're in charge of this, you know?
Yeah, so I'm the liaison to the Parks Board, and yes, we have discussed this a few times at meetings and gone back and cleaned some things up. And yes, there's a lot of destruction that can go on in our parks. There's a lot of vandalism. There's a lot of trash. And there's a lot of just bad things that can go on after dark. We want to keep this community safe, clean, and a place where kids are able to go to these playgrounds and play and not be in danger in any way of harmful equipment or people or things like that. So I want to give Preston the tools that he needs to maintain them. And as we're growing, which I'm excited that we are doing and expanding our parks and community, I want to make sure that he has the tools to keep those safe as well as when they open. So
Okay.
I'm prepared to support this.
Any other council member want to say anything? Okay. I think we're good. You're doing a good job out there, Preston. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, buddy.
Madam Secretary, will you call the vote?
Yep.
Vote.
Yep.
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio?
Aye.
Mr. Lesher?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Pack?
All right.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. I appreciate it. Okay. So I guess, Mr. DeVillio, we're ready for solar discussion, aren't we?
Yes, we are. Thank you. And I will, I'll let Miguel kick this off for us.
Okay. All right. Miguel, you still with us or you sleep?
Still here.
Okay. That's good.
We also
Appreciate you hanging in there with us tonight.
Thank you. Chip Council from the chair of the Planning Commission is also participating on this virtual meeting. The County Council and the Planning Commission had a joint work session earlier today to discuss our existing solar regulations, which are in Chapter 190 of the Talbot County Code for small scale, medium, and large scale solar energy systems. It was a very good discussion. I think there's concern expressed from the Planning Commission who requested the work session about the impact, the impact of large-scale solar energy systems in terms of their placement in Talbot County and their impact on prime agricultural land, and if there's an ability to look at amendments to the solar regulations for large-scale energy systems, which are 2 megawatts or greater, if there's a possibility to look at agricultural offsets to mitigate the impact of using prime agricultural land and prime agricultural soils for solar energy systems. And so I want to turn it over to Chip, I think, President Callahan, if I can do that.
Absolutely. Chip, are you with us? Mr. Council, you with us?
I did not see Mr. Council as a
I'm sorry.
participant on tonight.
I thought he was on. I apologize for that. And so I think to have some time to look at what are the possibilities for amendments to the regulations for potential agricultural offsets, including a in lieu of fee type of program, where on a per acre basis, large scale energy, solar energy system developers would be able to provide a contribution on a per acre basis to be reserved into a restricted county fund that could be used for matching grants with our MALF program, with the state's MALF program, I should say, which is the main program that we provide matching funds for in order to for the state to acquire agricultural easements to be held in perpetuity. And so the request or the discussion at the work session was, should we consider taking a look at that and looking at potential legislation to do that?
All right, sounds good. All right, so any council member want to comment on this, or we just sort of we had that great work session on Mr. Council and Miguel and your and Brandon did a really good job with everything. So you know, I think you brought up some concerns, that's for sure, because we want to try to preserve some of this farmland. So I think we're going to leave it up to you guys to go ahead and get some information for us and keep going forward here.
Mr. Callahan?
Ha!
If I may, I'd like to use this opportunity to direct staff to proceed with drawing up a legislation that would affect a temporary moratorium. I think we said that 5 months should be able to do it for the timetable to get this through Planning Commission review for text amendment and through the legislative process. We want to be as brief as possible with any kind of action like this. You know, we don't want to hold things up.
Yes, sir.
We just
Yes,
want
sir.
to have the minimum amount of time that it can take to get the review and this opportunity in place that will allow us to add to agricultural preservation through large solar arrays. So I'll ask for the moratorium on those for 5 months and legislation to support that at this time.
Mr. Lesher, I couldn't agree with you even more. Would you entertain 3 months? And if we need extension, we could do that. You know, that way we always can push it, but you know,
I will consent to whatever length of time, and if if we have to revisit this 3 months time, seems given that we've got a 60-day implementation or effective date for any legislation, it seems to me that you've got to build that in, and so that only leaves really 30 days for us to get this through, which with advertising deadlines, I don't know that that's achievable. I think that if we are at 3 months, that we will
Well, it gives
necessarily be extending this.
I know it puts a little
I'll
bit.
agree to whatever length of time. I'll agree to whatever length of time the body supports at this time.
Yeah, I think we need a little bit more time than that, and it's possible that we don't have the 60-day implementation period in the case of a moratorium. But I think we can, and plus we can also shorten moratoriums as well. We can extend them, but we can also shorten them. So I just want to make sure that staff, and we do have to do advertising, but make sure staff has enough time.
Right.
And we can always change the amount of months, but I think the direction to at least draw up the whatever it is we're drawing up.
So I believe a moratorium can take place, because it's emergency legislation, can take place immediately. The legislation that we're drafting, though, the ultimate text amendment, that will require 60 days, and it's that timetable that I'm concerned about being able to meet within a 90-day moratorium.
I'll go ahead and second Mr. Lesher's 5-month moratorium. And now that we've got it seconded, I'd like to say a couple things about this real quick.
Go ahead.
I don't want anyone in the public to hear moratorium and think that we're trying to stop this. As you saw earlier, I've often believed that sometimes you have to slow down to go faster. Sometimes you have to stop what you're doing and completely reevaluate. We have one chance to get this right. We've seen different areas when they try to put regulations in place to prevent this from coming, and we've seen it get overruled by the state, and the county was not listened to. This is our opportunity to put a plan together, knowing that the state has a plan for this, that the state wants, I believe it was 23 or 17,000 acres, I think it was, of solar panels that they want around the state. This is coming. There are incentives to do it. And what I want to do is a couple things. I want to make sure that the farmland is maintained underneath of it and used as much as possible, whether we're doing low growing plants to help the bees, pollinators, whether we're doing the very aggressive plantings of produce between the solar panels, so that the community is able to crop share from that, as well as I want to make sure that we're not putting if any of these facilities in the future put the big panels out, new technology comes in, everybody has it on their shingles, and the company just goes bankrupt. I don't want to see 700 acres of solar panels just left out because the company's gone. I believe we all have some genuine concerns for this, but it's something that we have to, that is going to come. And so we want to make sure we get the best benefit, which is in turn taking the money or getting money from this and keeping farmland in the ag preservation. We have lots of farmers every year that come to us and are applying for it, and unfortunately we don't have the dollars to do it. I think sometimes it's 1, 2, maybe 3 farms get some acreage put into this. So it's a wonderful opportunity for us, and I just want to make sure that we're taking the full advantage of it and keeping everybody in mind. So it's not a no forever. It's just a short moratorium to put us on the clock and make sure that we work quickly, aggressively together to make sure this is right.
Thank you, Mr. Villio. Well said. Thank you. Thank you. That you're right. The moratorium word starts to scare people, and all it means to us here as a council, in the community, and the farmers, to get this right. So it's a small price to pay for a few months for a lifetime in Talbot County. That's for sure. So I want to make that right. That's for sure. Okay. Any other council member? Okay. All right. So Miguel, you good?
All good. I think I understand direction. Yes.
Thanks a lot, Miguel. I know it's been a little bit long day for you too. So really appreciate you hanging in there with us. You know what I mean? Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay. Guess up next is County Manager, Mr. Stamp.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm sorry, do we need a vote on that? We had a motion and a second.
Oh, we did?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
It's just
we
any
can
member
do-
can direct the county attorney to proceed
Okay.
with drafting it, so it doesn't need a motion in a second.
Okay.
Have my direction from Mr. Lesher.
Okay, you want me to go forward? Okay, council, thank you. I only have two items for you this evening. The first one, I have Ray Clark here, your county engineer, requesting council's approval to send a letter to MDE to have Talbot County assume ownership and operation of the Preserve at Y Mills wastewater treatment plant, as was discussed in the November 9th meeting. You have the letter in your packet, and Mr. Clark is here to answer any questions relative to this. Mr. Clark?
Yeah, I can. We did, council, we did have some discussions with the MDE's Assistant AG's office, and they were looking for a date certain as to when we would transfer the, I guess when the county would take over the facility. It's a little difficult to do that. So working with Patrick, I think, we're now going to look at taking over the facility by doing an amendment to the comprehensive water and sewer plan. There's going to be a kind of a process and a little, I guess some time associated with that. So what we've done is really kind of provided them with, kind of a time frame of probably, in the spring or early summer would be the time that we would end up taking over the facility. At the same time, we also need to draft the transfer agreement as well.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Any questions? Any questions for council?
And so we need a motion to authorize the letter.
Please.
I will so move.
I'll second.
Okay, we got a motion and seconded, Madam Secretary, to send a letter.
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio?
Aye.
Mr. Lesher?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Pat?
Aye. Thank you, council, and thank you, Mr. Clark. The second item I have, council, is I'm requesting council approval to fund a mid-year cost of living increase for county employees at a rate of 3.5% in the amount of $408,500 to be funded from FY22 contingency. This would be retroactive to January 1st, 2022. There are adequate funds to cover the cost of this request, leaving a balance of $347,408 in contingency.
Thank you, Mr. Stamp. Council discussion.
We are losing employees. We've heard about vacancies in various departments. We know what the job environment is out. It is out there. We've seen this all over our community. It is tough to fill positions, and employees are moving to better paying positions. They're out there. It is, if you will, a job seekers market. We need to do something to stem the tide here. We need to ensure that our employees have the incentives that they need to remain loyal to Talbot County. And so I'm prepared to support this.
Thank you, Mr. Lesher. Any other council member?
So I agree. It's a very unusual time for employees. There's a lot of opportunity, and when you're looking in that $15 to $18 range per hour, you're seeing signs at places you've never seen it before, at fast food places. And unfortunately, that's the night shift that you don't realize, and you may not get all 40 hours a week that you're expecting to, but they see it and it sticks with them, and then they get upset. They're disappointed. They're thinking that I deserve more. We've seen inflation driving the price up. This is not a big increase that anybody's going to get in their paycheck. Hopefully it'll be enough to fill up the tank. A lot of people might have only been buying half a tank of gas or a quarter tank of gas and just trying to get by. And my goal is to help them get through this time now. And it's also a unique time when you're on social media. If you're looking at the county employees that do so much for this county, it's nonstop that they get bashed on everything. Their roads aren't cleared fast enough. Salt is put down too early, and everybody's complaining that, oh, snow may not even come. They're out there trying to save you. The police force that they keep getting beat up upon. These are the same people who volunteer for your Little League team. You don't seem to care that they're coaching, yet all of a sudden they're a bad guy when they throw their uniform on. The EMTs that are having challenging times of running more calls with sicker patients with a virus that they're scared of. These are extremely challenging times, and I just ask that the public recognize that and be somewhat kinder and civil to one another and stop the complaining. And if you're a social media moderator, for goodness sakes, hold yourself accountable. All those people who are posting everything on your forums, you're the one who's in charge of that. You're approving that message that's going out there, and it's making it difficult on people's mental health. And we already know how challenged everyone is right now. So if a small little pay increase that we're offering right now, it's not enough. I wish we could do more, but we're doing the best that we possibly can under these conditions, and we're going to keep evaluating as we go through the budget. We gave the county manager the direction of having a flat budget, and instantly I'm hearing things that we have to do a COLA increase, which I recognize. And then we hear about Kerwin, and we see about the teacher pay. And we know that there is a big gap amongst people in this community. And if I can do a little bit now and we have the money to do it, I'm happy to do it. And so I am fully in support of this, but I just ask one another to just check on each other and not put each other down so much.
Thank you, Mr. DeVillio. Any other council member want to comment on that?
I will just briefly. I think that the mid-season COLA is appropriate. We all have seen the inflation numbers, gas prices going up, grocery bills prices going up, utility costs, even just to heat your home, those costs have gone up. So I think any way that we could help our workforce, whether it's $30 to go towards groceries or $30 to go towards gas. I think the act of us showing that we are in touch with the current climate out there speaks more than the 3.5 COLA increase. I think sometimes your workforce wants to make sure you're still in touch and engaged with what they're dealing with. To Mr. DeVillio's point, if we had more to give more, then I think the council would probably lean to do that. And hey, there may be another COLA coming up in FY23. We'll look at that. So I certainly support this. I think that it certainly will let the workforce know that we are in touch with what the current climate is that they're dealing with. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pack. Well said. Ms. Price?
Thank you. I am definitely in support of this as well. It is difficult, though, to make these decisions mid-year. I was taught a long time ago by Mr. Tommy Duncan early on that you just don't do things in the middle of the year. And making long-term decisions. And we are on the cusp of doing our budget. We just had our opening budget discussions this evening. But sometimes you have to do something, and we do have the best employees, I think, of any of the counties in the state. So we will be having further discussions. We're getting, some feedback on a study that's been being done to figure out, where our salaries need to be adjusted. So this is a step in the right direction.
Thank you, Ms. Price. I would agree with council. We have, I think, Mr. Stamp, we have over 500 employees, full-time, part-time. I think they need reassurance that we're the leaders here, and we need them. They need to know they're needed and appreciated. The last couple of years has been, just hard on all of us. So you know, I'm in support of this too. And it's important that we have a positivity of us being behind these employees and supporting them and supporting their families. We see what's going on in the world right now, and it's a little tough, and you know, expenses are going up, inflation's going up, and anything like Mr. Pack said, you know, $30, $40 could make a big difference. So let's go ahead and put this. I think, Madam Secretary, I think, do we have to go ahead and put this to a vote?
Yes.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I got a motion and second to give 3.5% COLA mid-year increase. Madam Secretary, could you call the vote, please?
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio?
Aye.
Mr. Lesher?
Aye.
Ms. Price? Ms. Price?
Oops, I guess I didn't have it on. Aye.
Mr. Pack?
Aye.
Thank you, Council. You all have expressed your feelings well, and certainly on behalf of the employees, I thank you. We have some of the best employees that anyone can have, and they're out there providing service to the public, critical services, and this is a great expression of your support of them. And again, thank you. So that concludes the county manager report for this evening. And again, thank you, Council.
Thank you, Mr. Tam. Well done. Appreciate all your service too. Okay, now we're ready for public comment. Mr. Dorm, do we have anybody online?
We do have a person online wishing to speak. If anyone else wishes to speak, please use the raise hand button on your computer or the *3 on your phone. This is a 410-822 number. Caller, please begin.
So, caller, could you say your name and where you're from? And Mr. Pack, could you take the time? Be great.
Mr. Callahan, I am a bit under the weather tonight. I would yield to Mr. Lesher to keep time if you would mind.
Okay, no problem, buddy. You know. Okay, caller. Well, welcome tonight.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Callahan. This is Tom Allspock calling on behalf of Talbot Preservation Alliance.
Yes,
I live
Tom?
here in Talbot County, as you know.
Yes.
May I proceed?
Yes, sir, you can. Welcome.
Yeah. What I would like to do is just elaborate very briefly on the letter I sent to the council this morning that, interestingly enough, relates somewhat to your discussion just a few minutes ago about a letter that you were sending out having to do with the county taking over responsibility for the wastewater, the failing wastewater spray field plant at the reserve at Y Mills. And my concern, as I expressed in my correspondence, is that 3, 4, 5 years down the road, you'll be writing another letter like that about the county taking over responsibility for the Lakeside TRAPPE East spray field plant, which is going to be a much more monumental undertaking than the preserve at Y Mills. And the reason I have this concern is that the developer of the TRAPPE East Lakeside project, as you may not know because it's been under the radar screen, will be absolved of all responsibility for operation and maintenance of the spray field plant as soon as it's completed. The agreement between the developer and the town of Trappe is that the developer shall turn the new spray field plant over to the town of Trappe, and the town of Trappe shall accept it and shall be responsible for operating it thereafter. The town of Trappe has no experience with operating a plant like this. Presumably they can hire some folks, but inevitably there are going to be problems. You've heard uncontradicted evidence from many sources about the high rate of failures of these programs. Up to as much as 50% of them have problems. And where I'm coming from on this is that as we're moving ahead with further discussion of this facility and this development, there needs to be some means of ensuring ongoing responsibility of the developer for the efficient and proper operation of this wastewater spray field plant going into the future, so that it does not become a responsibility of and burden on the taxpayers, as very much could be the case given what the agreements now provide. In the short time I have right now, I'm not going to propose answers to that, but I think the discussion should be opened up, because this is an issue that's been ignored in all the other controversy we've had, but it's very, very critical. And right now, the county has no protection at all against ultimate responsibility for operation of this new spray field plant for 2,500 homes once it is turned over to the town of Trappe, which is not going to have the financial wherewithal to operate that facility if it fails, and if substantial corrections, improvements, repairs, et cetera, have to be made. So I just wanted to bring this to the council's attention while we're still in the beginning phases of all this, and hope that we can have some discussion and steps taken about how county taxpayers will be protected against ultimate responsibility for operating that spray field plant, similar to what we're looking at now with the preserve at Y Mills. So those are my comments. I hope you might take a look at the letter I sent this morning, which again does not offer all the answers, but hopefully opens a discussion for your consideration, and we can have some further talks about how to address what I think could be a very significant problem going into the future that we ought to try to resolve now. So that's it. Thanks for hearing me out. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Alsbach. I appreciate it. Okay, Mr. Dorn, anybody else?
That was our only caller.
Okay, so I guess if that's the only caller, we're down to council comments, and I'm losing my buddy, Mr. Pack. So I don't think you have too much more to say, do you, bud? You good? You good?
No, I do not. I just want to say happy President's Day, and I'm out.
Okay. I hope you feel better. Ms. Price. Let's take off mute. Let's go off mute.
Say happy Tuesday.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. DeVillio.
So I just, after that last caller, I mean, there's just so much misinformation and confusion and fear that everybody loves to spread. So this is a TRAPPE project. Is this right, Mr. Thomas? This is in the town of Trappe? And so TRAPPE would maintain the wastewater treatment facility at Lakeside. So if it failed, it would be on the burden of the town of Trappe, right? Not Talbot County citizens?
The facility is located within the corporate limits of the town of Trappe, yes.
Okay, so yeah. And the idea that these people that keep claiming that the town of Trappe is incapable of running a facility, it just, again, it gets me right back to what really bothers me of, we do a great job of finding and retaining excellent people here in Talbot County. We have the benefit of people moving here from all over the world because of the wonderful things that we have. The little America, you know, we're in Maryland, where you can surf in the summertime and ski in the wintertime in Deep Creek. You know, we've got beautiful waters. We're close to DC, the Kennedy Center. We attract some amazing individuals with excellent educations, as well as our schools educate these students who come back and have wonderful careers here. So as far as the community hearing people say that the small municipality of Trappe is just incapable of operating a facility, it really offends me, because that's speaking to my peers on that town commission. I don't expect any of them to be wastewater treatment facility experts, just as I'm not for Talbot County. But thank goodness for Ray Clark and his team that I can reference. And I expect Trappe to do the exact same thing. You know, Easton can only grow so big. At some point, we're going to grow into Caroline County down Matthewstown Road, or we're going to extend all the way down to St. Michael's or Oxford. Or we can stop the growth in Easton and focus it on another area that has been building and getting ready for this for over a decade. Okay, so this fear spreading, I don't understand it, and it really does bother me. Again, I'm always happy to sit down and go through this stuff with anyone. I respond back to the emails that I get. And I do have questions, I do have concerns, and I address those regularly. And I'm happy that we're moving forward with this. Again, we keep hearing over and over again, what about the school? What are they going to do about the school? Are you going to build a bigger White Marsh? Well, we're not going to build a bigger Easton Elementary. We've already maxed that one out. That's brand new and full, right? So yes, eventually White Marsh will be expanded. But that doesn't mean a third roof on Easton Elementary School. So there's a lot of great things going on in this community. There's a lot of great people in this community. There's also just a lot of people who just get pleasure out of spreading gossip, misinformation, and just trying to drive up their own, what they think is a joke. And I don't like that. I have a real big problem with it. I don't find it ethical at all. So I apologize for my rant tonight, but it's just so disappointing, because we do have some excellent people here at the top who are going to make sure we're happy, we're healthy, and safe.
Thank you, Mr. DeVille. I appreciate that. Mr. Vice President.
Mr. Callan, nothing further tonight.
Okay. So I'll go ahead and comment a little bit, just quick. So, I'm with everything that's going on with TRAPPE, I can say this: I'm very, very, very proud of them for, going forward with their new plant and stuff. So that's a big move for them, and I think they got great things coming. They got a great council. So I want to commend them, and anything that this council can do, you guys need to reach out to us so we can help you resolve these problems and trying to keep it positive. So being that said, TRAPPE needs to know that the county is here for them to help them. So with that said, Mr. Lesher, can you go ahead and close the session, please?
Will do. Tuesday, March 8th, beginning at 6:00 p.m. The council will be convening an open session at 2:00 p.m. for a work session with county staff, Sheriff Gamble and staff, representatives from Easton, Oxford, and St. Michael's, and police chiefs on House Bill 670, Maryland Police Accountability Act of 2021, and then adjourning into closed session to discuss real estate, legal, and personnel matters as listed on the statement for closing that meeting. On Tuesday, March 1st at 4:00 p.m. and Thursday, March 3rd at 4:30 p.m., the County Council will be holding budget presentations from county departments and agencies. Therefore, is there a motion to adjourn this meeting and reconvene as noted?
Council? I think council's gone. I make a motion.
Okay.
Yep. Madam Secretary?
Mr. Callahan?
Aye.
Mr. DeVillio?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Lesher?
Aye.
Ms. Price?
Aye.
Mr. Pack?
All right.
All right, council. Have a good evening, council. Thanks a lot.